The borders of Suriname are subject to long-standing disputes between Suriname and its neighbouring countries Guyana and France. Only the border with Brazil has been uncontroversial since 1906. Eastern border. In 1860, the question was posed from the French side, which of the two tributary rivers of the Marovine River was the headwater, and thus the border. A joint French-Dutch commission was appointed to review the issue. The Dutch side of the commission consisted of J. H. Baron van Heer tot Eversberg, J. F. A. Cadeau van Roosevelt and August Kapler. Lutz Vidal, Ronmy, Boudin, Dr. Rec composed the French side. In 1861 measurements were taken, which produced the following result. The Lawa had a flow rate of 35,960 meters 3 per minute at a width of 436 meters. The Tarpanahoni had a flow rate of 20,291 meters 3 per minute at a width of 285 meters. Thus, the Lawa River was the headwater of the Mironi River. There were no problems with this decision until 1885. However, the discovery of gold in the area between the Lawa and the Tarpanahoni created a new border conflict. On November 29, 1888, France and the Netherlands reached an agreement that the conflict should be subject to arbitration. Tsar Alexander III of Russia, acting as the arbitrator, decided that the Lawa was the headwater of the Mironi, and thus should be considered the border. The Netherlands and France concluded a border treaty on this section of the river on 30 September 1915. However, this decision created another issue as to which river is the source of the Lawa. The Netherlands considered the Mironi to be the source of the Lawa. The French considered the Litani, located further to the west, to be the source of the Lawa. This issue has still not been resolved. The Litani originates in the Tumucumac Mountains at approximately 2.5 degrees N 55 degrees west. Along its path it is fed by Coelcoele Creek, the Locker Creek, the Mapana Creek and the Olamari. The Mironi also has its source in the Tumucumac Mountains, at approximately 2 degrees north, 54 degrees west. It also absorbs the Coelcoele Creek, among others. Western border. According to an agreement between Suriname Governor Cornelis van Essen van Sommelsdijk and Berbice Governor Abraham van Per, both were Dutch colonies at the time. The border between the two colonies was located at Devil Creek, between the Berbice River and the Courantine River. In 1799, however, Berbice Governor Abraham Jacob van Imbies van Battenberg and Suriname Governor Julian François de Frederici signed an agreement in which the western bank of the Courantine River was demarcated as the boundary. All islands in the Courantine, as well as the post at Ariala, were deemed to be in Suriname, as the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1814 returned Suriname to Dutch rule in the boundaries of 1 January 1803. The Courantine became the new boundary between British Guiana and Suriname. New River Triangle. Robert Schomburgk surveyed British Guiana's borders in 1840. Taking the Courantine River as the border, he sailed up to its source, the Koutari River, in order to delineate the boundary. In 1871, however, Charles Barrington Brown discovered the New River, which he deemed the true source of the Courantine. Thus the New River Triangle dispute was born. The tribunal which dealt with the Venezuela crisis of 1895 also awarded the New River Triangle to British Guiana. The Netherlands, however, raised a diplomatic protest, claiming that the New River, and not the Koutari, was to be regarded as the source of the Courantine and the boundary. The British government in 1900 replied that the issue was already settled by the long acceptance of the Koutari as the boundary. In 1936, a mixed commission established by the British and Dutch government agreed to award the full width of the Courantine River to Suriname, as per the 1799 agreement. The territorial sea boundary was deemed to prolongate 10 degrees from point number 61, 3 miles from the shore. The new river triangle, however, was completely awarded to Guyana. The treaty putting this agreement into law was never ratified, because of the outbreak of World War II. In 1936, the Dutch representative Conrad Karel-Kayser signed an agreement with British and Brazilian representatives, placing the tri-point junction near the source of the Kutari River, desiring to put the border issue to a closure before British Guiana would gain independence. The British government restarted negotiations in 1961. The British position asserted Dutch sovereignty over the Corentyne River, a 10 degrees line dividing the territorial sea, and British control over the new river triangle. The Netherlands replied with a formal claim to the new river triangle, but with a Taalweg boundary in the Corentyne River. No agreements were made and Guyana became independent with its borders unresolved. In 1969, border skirmishes occurred between Guyanese forces and Surinamese militias. In 1971, the Surinamese and Guyanese government agreed in Trinidad to withdraw military forces from the triangle. Guyana still maintains a portion of Suriname's territory in the southwest of the country occupied and performs management actions from there. Maritime dispute. The maritime boundary has long been disputed between Guyana and Suriname as well, and led in 2000 to skirmishes between Guyanese oil explorers and Surinamese coastguards. Guyana claimed a Taalweg boundary of the Corentyne River and a 35 degrees line from the true north from the mouth of the river. Suriname claimed sovereignty over the full width of the Corentyne and a 10 degrees dividing line. Eventually a 5-member tribunal was convened under the rules set out in Annex 7 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which in 2007 set out its own boundary that differed from both parties' claims. The maritime border was finally settled by international arbitration. The tribunal did award sovereignty over the full width of the Corentyne to Suriname, and also awarded Suriname with a 10 degrees territorial sea boundary 3 miles from the shore, according to the 1936 agreement. The rest of the territorial sea boundary, which extends 12 miles from the shore under modern international law, and the boundary separating the exclusive economic zones of both countries, was awarded according to the principle of equidistance. However, southern border. The southern border with Brazil is described in the Treaty of Limits of 1906 as formed from the French border French Guiana to the British border British Guiana. The line of the drainage divide between the Amazon basin to the south and the basins of the rivers flowing into north to the Atlantic Ocean. The border described in the treaty was the result of an arbitration process that was headed by King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy. The treaty was signed in Rio de Janeiro on May 5, 1906. Brazil and the Netherlands both ratified the treaty in 1908.